Hello, welcome. Welcome back to another episode. Today, we are going to get into something that is my most favorite topic, and that is sacred, spirally living, seasonal living. It's probably going to feel very familiar when we get into what it actually is, and yet it's probably felt really far away. But this way of living and being is as natural and intrinsic to you as your very heartbeat and breath. And so we're going to re-examine and remember, reintegrate the sacred rhythms of life, of nature, and like I said, specifically through the lens of seasonal living in a literal sense, so the seasons that the earth experiences, but also what that actually represents on a deeper, more metaphorical, subtle, psycho-emotional, spiritual level that is actually being conveyed and portrayed through the literal seasons that we experience through the five senses. So we're going to explore what it means to live in relationship with the sacred spiral of existence. And before we talk about how to do it, we must talk about why so many of us feel so disconnected from it in the first place. Because the truth is, we are, right? Something has been lost. Maybe more accurate to say that it's been forgotten. And I think much of the suffering that we experience in modern life can be tracked back to this forgetting. And this forgetting is the fact that life is rhythmic, everything is rhythmic, forgetting that we are nature. There's nothing separate about any of this. And the forgetting that healing, becoming, and growth happen in seasons, happen in a very non-linear way. And this forgetting has serious consequences. And so we're going to talk about what I've called the great forgetting and how we can remember and why we want to, what becomes possible when we remember and when we come back into touch with the sacred rhythms of life. All right. So that's where we're headed. So at one time, human life moved in relationship with cycles. So just pause for a moment and think about everything within you and around you that is cyclical, that exists on a spirally continuum that is not linear. And perhaps a better question would be to think of something that is not that. Think of something that is linear. Most all of the things that we can probably come up with that aren't existing in cycles on this spiral are probably human made. Yeah. So we have the sunrise and the sunset, the changing of seasons, weather, the land itself, periods of feast and famine and harvesting and planting, moonlight, darkness, slowness, quickness, death, birth. Life was not separate from nature, it was woven into it, and we belonged to it. And in belonging to it, we understood something that modern life has largely forgotten. And that is, like I said, that life does not move in straight lines, it moves in cycles, in spirals, expansion and contraction, growth and decay, emergence and retreat, action and rest. And so this is not just like something that's, you know, poetic and nice to think about. This is just nature. This is how we are meant to be. This is a practicality. And it used to shape how people ate, how they slept, how they worked, how they gathered, grieved, celebrated, healed. There was an intimacy with reality, with the ever evolving, ever expanding nature of reality. There was a cooperation with what was. But now, most of us live far outside of those rhythms, and artificial light has replaced darkness. Screens have replaced stillness. Clocks have replaced intuition. Notifications have replaced silence. And I invite you, as I do to all of my clients, to not have your phone make sounds or every little thing. Perhaps, maybe like for a phone call, but turn these notifications off. Anyways, and productivity, this like endless need to produce has replaced presence and actually being. And in many ways, we have forgotten how to listen, how to really hear, and how to move as though we are part of life. It's like we're kind of running from it or running around with this belief that we're separate and that we're somehow above the laws of nature, and that bites us in the booty that comes back to get us. One of the deepest ruptures in modern life is our relationship with time. Industrial time taught us that time is mechanical, right? It's linear, it's measurable, it's predictable, it's productive, it's something to manage, something to maximize, something to beat. And in that worldview, the goal is consistency. It is sameness, homogenized sameness. It is output and performance and do the same thing at the same speed. And in fact, if you can do it faster, that's even better. And do that every day, no matter what, no matter the season, no matter your capacity, no matter your body, no matter your spirit. And this is the world that we've inherited. This is what we're living in. And it's one of the greatest distortions that we carry because sacred time does not work like that. So sacred time, as opposed to industrial time, is rhythmic. It's alive, it's responsive, it ebbs and it flows, it builds and releases. It asks for movement and rest, for fullness and emptiness, for fiery productivity and that go, go, go energy, and then stillness. So nothing in nature, in the natural world, ever asks for or demonstrates endless output, right? Like just think about that. There's nothing in the natural world that does that. Only humans living in modern times strive for that. And it comes at a cost, a big cost. So many of us are trying to maintain that kind of expansive, fiery, summer-like energy of like going, expanding, outward, go, go, go all year long. So that constant production and doing and becoming. And then we wonder why we're exhausted, why we get sick, why we're burnt out, why our nervous systems are fried, why we feel so disconnected from ourselves. And this is not a coincidence and not some random occurrence. This is what happens when life is lived outside of rhythm. So I think that I've made it very clear by now that life is not linear. Life is spirally. Everything that is natural, including us, is existing in a very cyclical, rhythmic fashion. The sacred spiral is the architecture of becoming. Everything moves through it. Everything. The seasons of the year, the seasons of a single day, the seasons of our relationships, of healing, the seasons of our body, the seasons of our spiritual life, even our emotions too move in this way. Nothing is fixed, nothing remains the same. Everything is in a constant dance of becoming, evolution, and expansion. And this is good news because it means that stagnation is not permanent, pain is not permanent, confusion isn't permanent. I was speaking with a client recently, and they were having a very hard time getting in touch with their emotions and expressing them. And part of the reason that we were able to figure out why that was together is that they were afraid of them. They were afraid of getting stuck there. They were afraid of getting lost in it. And that's not how emotions work. So everything is constantly moving when we let it move, when we allow that natural flow to happen. It does. So we have to learn how to cooperate with the season that we're in and to trust ourselves and the flow of life to participate in this sacred spiral of existence. And, you know, no wonder we struggle with that because we've been taught to resist that. We've been taught to pride ourselves on the linear nature, the linearity, making up new words here, linearity of life and that kind of outsmarting and overriding the natural world and the spirally essence of it. So we've been taught to resist the seasons that we're in, to resist the ebbs and the flows and our emotions and the ways that our bodies change, aging, all of it. We want to rush what is unfolding, to skip ahead, to cling, to avoid, to force, instead of just trusting and being with. There's like a desire to control and to cling versus to be with. And the funny thing is, like, there are seasons upon seasons upon seasons. This seasonal living, this spirally living has so many layers to it. So it's like we're constantly entangled in it in some way. And I'll speak to that more in a moment. So when we live disconnected from rhythm, our whole system really does suffer. Our nervous systems become so dysregulated, our digestion weakens, which creates the ripe conditions for disease of all kinds to unfold. Our sleep becomes fragmented and just kind of our minds are really overstimulated. Our emotions become harder to feel and to process. We lose touch with natural signals from our body, and we really lose touch with all of it, with intuition, with our inner wisdom. And so we begin to then mistrust ourselves and then everything and everyone, and states like burnout and inflammation and anxiety and exhaustion and numbness just kind of become normal and normalized. But that normal does not mean natural, and it's not something that we are meant to stay in and to experience for long periods of time. Burnout is the body grieving a life lived against nature. So I really invite you to hold on to that for a moment. Dis-ease is the body and the mind grieving a life lived against its nature. So this great forgetting is costing us in the ways of our health. It costs us intimacy with life and with everything in it. We lose reverence, we lose slowness, we lose presence and patience, we lose trust and timing, we lose our ability to listen, we lose our ability to grieve and to celebrate, we lose our relationship with mystery. And in many ways, we lose our sense of belonging, not just to the world and something greater, but to ourselves. And this is that kind of like soul level loss, that deep longing to belong, and the great forgetting that we already do. And I think many people feel this today, even if they can't quite name it. They feel very untethered and unrooted, and like something essential is missing. And it's not so much missing as it is forgotten. It's like we've lost our ability to see it and to feel it. And it's because we are so out of rhythm. And all of this is what is largely responsible for our mass collective depletion and our worsening mental, emotional, and physical health, as well as the truly deplorable state of the planet and so much more. So the seasons, like I hinted at earlier, they're not just weather patterns or astronomical configurations, like when we have the equinox and the solstice. They are sacred teachers. They are mirrors. They are thresholds, portals, initiations, and each season carries its own specific medicine, its own specific mood and flavor and invitation for us. I like to think about each of the seasons, and I recognize 8 of them. So we've got the 4 main seasons, And then each of those has the early part and the late part. So we have, winter, spring, summer, fall. And then within those, we have kind of like a sub-season as we are transitioning into the next one. So the beginning part of summer feels very different than the later part of summer. And so I like to think of each of these seasons as a different face of the divine showing us something, inviting us into something, mirroring to us our own soul's process of maturation and becoming. Because each season asks something different of us. Again, whether it is the literal expression of the season, we're going to be eating and dressing and recreating and resting very differently in July than we are in January. So whether it's the literal season asking something differently of us or the season of our life, right? The spring season of our life feels very different from the winter season of our life. So when you're like a baby and a child, that feels very different than when you are in your later years of life. And different things are being asked. Even the days have their own set of seasons. So it's a very different vibe at 7 a.m. than it is at 4 p.m. Right. And so I'm giving you these literal examples so you can start to feel like, oh yeah, what does that feeling feel like? Where else do I experience kind of an early spring vibe in my life? What does that feel like? That sense of like becoming and growth and sprouting and youth. Maybe you also experience that when you're beginning a new project, for example, or entering into a new relationship. So each season asks something differently of us. Winter may ask us to rest, to listen, to be still. And again, this is literal winter and the ways that winter shows up in its different nuanced ways. Spring may ask us to trust emergence, to begin again, to embrace being a beginner, being a student, youthfulness. Summer may ask us to refine, to kind of forge and finesse rough edges of our false ego, for example. Autumn may ask us to release, to discern, to let go. And the really beautiful thing is, to come back to this kind of notion that everything is very spirally and not linear, is that no two seasons are ever the same. So it might be like, oh, it's winter again, literally or more metaphorically in my life, but no two winters, no two summers, no two autumns are ever the same or have the same thing exactly to teach us or to show us, because you're different every time you arrive. And so the seasons are breadcrumbs back to yourself. Yeah. Like I said, this is the divine offering different facets, different faces of itself, kind of like saying, hey, look at this. Step into this. Little breadcrumbs back to yourself, back to truth and to your own becoming. So when we begin remembering rhythm and living accordingly, everything really does soften. The conditions for healing are set, the nervous system settles, the body begins to trust again. And so it really is like for a lot of people, it can feel like when you've been inside of a really loud restaurant or party and you've kind of gotten used to how loud it is, it doesn't feel maybe problematic, or you're not connecting the fact that your head is pounding to the like loud noise because it's just like you kind of gone numb to it and it's just there. But when you step outside and it's quiet, you realize like, oh, wowzers, that was really getting to me. So for a lot of people, they're like, how, what do you mean live seasonally? How can it be this easy? And what do you mean it can have all of these wonderful benefits? It kind of sounds like the old snake oil salespeople, right? Like, oh, it's a magical cure-all. But it is. Says every snake oil salesperson ever, right? So stepping back into this rhythm is it sets the conditions for healing, because we are back into how we are meant to be, what this system requires, what is natural for it. There's allowance, there's ease, there's trust, intuition returns. We stop trying to force, we stop resisting what is natural, and we begin cooperating with life instead of fighting it and overriding it. And again, this is where so much becomes possible, not through any type of control or overriding or ignoring, but through cooperation, through relationship with yourself and like the natural world of which you are part. It's not through domination, but devotion and rhythm. And so this is seasonal living. It's not just changing your food with the weather, which is also quite crucial. Please do that. But living in relationship with that sacred spiral within and around you in all of the ways that it shows up, really letting yourself be the emotions that flow, those different seasons of our life, the seasons of relationships, of projects, of all of it. All of it is it's layers upon layers. It's letting nature guide your becoming and allowing life itself to really shape you. And so where do we begin? Really simply, we notice. Just notice. Notice the season that you are in right now, literally. Like what season is it where you're living? What season are you in emotionally, spiritually? What season of life? You know, how old are you? What what season is the body in? Obviously, age is just a number, but it does, we can understand that living in like a 50-year-old body is a little different than living in a 10-year-old body. It's a different season. And you can begin to ask yourself, what is life asking of me right now? What season am I resisting? That is a beautiful question. I love exploring that one with people. If there's a season in particular that you really dislike, exploring the literal and kind of subtle implications of that season, how else you experience that season, and what that means for you, what it is about it that you don't like, and how that is showing up in other places. Where am I trying to force summer in the middle of winter? Right? Are you somebody that has a hard time wintering, literally or more metaphorically, energetically? Where am I trying to harvest what has not yet grown? Where might you be trying to force yourself to have the answers to something, for example, or to skip past the growth part to like have the harvest ready to show or to use? And then maybe something asking yourself, like, where am I trying to bloom when I'm being asked to root? So where are you just not ready and maybe need to dig those roots down a little bit more, find a little more ground before it's time to really emerge? These questions and really practicing daily self-reflection and energy management really help you to foster awareness to get that remembering going. So it's all connected. And that's one of the 5 daily practices that I teach and that I work with people when we're building the daily rhythms, because the daily rhythms, living in that kind of season of the day, is what helps us to build stability to be able to like kind of zoom out and do the deeper healing and the deeper becoming with this kind of all-encompassing seasonal spirally essence of life itself. I have so many resources on seasonal living, from lifestyle and nutrition suggestions for the seasons to the deeper, more subtle invitations of the seasons, and so much more. This is my most favorite topic. They're all on my website at innerspark.life/seasonal living. So, in closing, just to remind us that even though most of us humans have learned to override these natural rhythms, nature has not forgotten. So they're not gone. And it's not like, oh, it's helpless for us. We're so conditioned. Like, no, no, no. It really is simple. The sacred spiral is still here and we're still part of it. Just because we have forgotten and maybe think we don't like the fact that we are part of nature and that nature exists in a very rhythmic fashion, that doesn't mean that it's not happening, right? Just because we have been conditioned out of it, believe falsely that we don't like it, um, doesn't mean that it's not here. The sacred spiral is still here, still turning, still guiding, still inviting. and the seasons remain, the wisdom remains, and the invitation remains. Those breadcrumbs are there. It's just a matter of like turning and raising our awareness again, opening ourselves. So thank you so much for tuning in with me today. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with somebody who could also benefit. Share the love. And to learn more about this topic and many others, as well as how to work together, I invite you to head over to innerspark.life, and I will see you next time.